Emotional withdrawal is often the first and most telling sign that someone's feelings have begun to change. It doesn't happen all at once, but rather in small, subtle ways that, when pieced together, reveal a stark shift in the relationship. At first, it may seem like a busy schedule, stress, or simply a need for personal space. But as time goes on, the disconnect grows deeper. Conversations that once flowed effortlessly become short and transactional. The enthusiasm in their voice fades, and the energy they once poured into interactions diminishes. The inside jokes that once made both of you laugh are now met with half-hearted smiles or ignored altogether. There is a noticeable absence of curiosity about your day, your thoughts, and your emotions. Where they once asked about your dreams, your fears, and your experiences, now there is only silence. The depth that once defined your conversations is replaced with surface-level exchanges, as if they are going through the motions rather than genuinely engaging. You may find yourself sharing something important only to be met with disinterest or an absent-minded nod. The lack of engagement is not just about what is being said, but how it is received. Their body language shifts. Where there was once eye contact, there is now a distant gaze, a distraction, or even an outright avoidance of conversation. The withdrawal extends beyond just words. The small gestures that once made you feel loved and valued begin to fade. The texts that used to come frequently throughout the day become sporadic or stop altogether. The eagerness to share time together turns into excuses, cancellations, or passive acceptance rather than excitement. When someone begins to emotionally withdraw, they start to create an invisible barrier between themselves and the relationship. They may no longer turn to you for comfort or support the way they once did. Where they once shared their struggles, their fears, and their triumphs, now there is quiet detachment. You may hear about major events in their life in passing, rather than being confided in directly. Even in moments of physical closeness, there is a noticeable emotional distance. Hugs feel shorter, kisses feel less passionate, and the warmth that once radiated between you begins to cool. The energy in their presence shifts as if they are physically there but mentally and emotionally somewhere else. You may find yourself feeling lonelier in their company than you would if you were alone. Emotional withdrawal often leads to an increasing sense of self-doubt in the person on the receiving end. You begin to wonder if you are imagining things, if you are overreacting, or if there is something wrong with you. The inconsistency in their behavior creates confusion, making it difficult to pinpoint exactly what has changed. They may still show affection on occasion, but it feels different, forced, obligatory, or routine rather than genuine. As they pull away emotionally, conflicts may arise, not out of passion or care, but out of frustration. When someone no longer feels emotionally connected, they may react differently to disagreements. They may no longer fight for the relationship, choosing instead to disengage or avoid confrontation altogether. Arguments that once led to resolutions now end in silence or indifference. The passion that once drove discussions is replaced with apathy. You might find yourself trying harder, doing more, and making efforts to reconnect, only to be met with resistance or a lack of reciprocity. The push and pull dynamic creates emotional exhaustion, leaving you feeling as though you are carrying the weight of the relationship alone. This emotional withdrawal is not always intentional. Sometimes people do not even realize they are pulling away until the distance becomes undeniable. It may stem from unresolved emotions, personal struggles, or a shift in priorities. But regardless of the reason, the effect remains the same. The once strong emotional bond begins to dissolve, leaving behind a lingering sense of disconnection. You notice the difference not just in their actions, but in their energy. There is a lack of enthusiasm, a missing spark, a heaviness in their presence that was never there before. Even the way they say your name feels different, less tender, less invested, more distant. There is a clear difference between needing space and emotionally withdrawing. When someone needs space, they communicate it, they reassure you, and they return. But when someone is withdrawing emotionally, they slowly create a gap that only seems to widen over time. The reassurance you once received fades, and instead there is an unspoken tension that grows between you. The absence of effort on their part becomes evident, as though they are no longer invested in maintaining the same level of closeness. Even if they do not outright say it, their actions, or lack thereof, speak volumes. The most difficult part of emotional withdrawal is the gradual realization that you are no longer their safe place. Where they once sought you out for comfort, for laughter, for connection, now they seem to look elsewhere or keep everything to themselves. The partnership that once felt like a team begins to feel one-sided. The weight of emotional intimacy, once shared equally, now rests solely on your shoulders. You sense that something is missing, even if they have not said a word about it. The unspoken becomes louder than anything they could say. When someone's love for you begins to fade, one of the first things they will do is shift their priorities. At first, it may not be obvious. They may still be present in your life, still responding to messages, still engaging in conversations, but there is a change in the way they allocate their time and energy. The moments they once reserved for you now seem occupied by something or someone else. The attention that once felt so unwavering now feels scattered, as though you are no longer at the center of their world. It starts subtly. They become busier, their schedule suddenly packed with things that never seemed to matter as much before. They may claim work is demanding, that they are overwhelmed, or that they are simply trying to focus on personal goals. While all of these can be valid reasons, the difference is in the way they communicate and reassure. When someone still loves you but is genuinely busy, they make an effort to ensure you feel valued. They find small ways to include you, to remind you that you are still important. But when someone's feelings have shifted, the excuses begin to feel hollow. They no longer make time the way they once did. They no longer go out of their way to see you or to make plans. What used to be a natural part of their routine now feels like an afterthought. The change in priorities is not always about being physically unavailable. Sometimes it manifests in emotional unavailability. They may still be around, but they are not present in the same way. They used to text you good morning, check in throughout the day, and share details about their life. Now those messages are fewer and farther between. When they do reach out, it feels more obligatory than genuine. There is no excitement in their words, no warmth in their tone. The calls that once lasted for hours now feel rushed. The way they listen to you changes. They are distracted, disinterested, or simply not engaging the way they used to. When someone begins to shift their priorities, the things they once did effortlessly now seem like a burden. They used to make plans in advance, excited about spending time together. Now they hesitate, they delay, or they cancel altogether. Spontaneous moments of affection and connection become rare. Where they once prioritized your happiness, your comfort, and your needs, they now seem more focused on themselves. It may feel like you are no longer part of their inner world, like you are watching from the sidelines as they direct their energy elsewhere. Their availability changes. They may claim to be too tired to talk at night, yet they seem to have energy for other activities. They may say they are too busy to meet, yet their social media shows them out with friends or engaging in hobbies. There is a shift in how they choose to spend their free time, and more often than not, you are no longer included. It is not that they are simply busy, it is that they are choosing to invest their time in other areas of life while deprioritizing you. The imbalance becomes evident. You are still making time for them, still prioritizing them, but they no longer seem to do the same. The shift in priorities often leads to an increasing sense of distance. You start to feel like an outsider in their life, like someone who is no longer as deeply connected as before. They stop sharing their thoughts, their dreams, their worries. They stop involving you in their plans for the future. When you bring up the distance you feel, they may brush it off, say that nothing has changed, or even make you feel like you are overthinking. But deep down, you know that something is different. The dynamic is not the same. The person who once saw you as a top priority now seems to place you somewhere further down the list. In some cases, they may even become irritated when you ask for their time or attention. They may make you feel like you are being demanding, that your expectations are unreasonable. This is not because they are actually overwhelmed. It is because because their investment in the relationship has decreased and they do not want to acknowledge it. Instead of addressing the real issue, they shift the blame, making it seem as though you are the one causing unnecessary tension. But the reality is that relationships thrive on mutual effort, and when one person stops prioritizing the other, the imbalance becomes impossible to ignore. Over time, the shift in priorities becomes undeniable. The excuses become repetitive. The efforts become one-sided. And the connection that once felt effortless begins to fade. What used to be natural and easy now feels like a struggle. The person who once made you feel seen and valued now makes you question where you stand. The way they prioritize their time and energy tells you everything you need to know, even if they never say it outright. Irritation over small things is one of the most telling signs that someone's feelings have changed. When love begins to fade, the patience, understanding, and admiration that once existed are gradually replaced with frustration and annoyance. Things that were once endearing or easily overlooked now seem to trigger sharp reactions. The way you laugh, the way you tell a story, the little habits you've always had. Suddenly these things no longer bring warmth, but instead provoke sighs, eye rolls, or even outright complaints. It often starts subtly, a deep sigh when you ask a simple question, a quick snap when you forget something small, or a dismissive tone when you share a thought. You might notice that their tolerance for mistakes or imperfections has decreased significantly. Where they once laughed off your quirks or reassured you when you made a minor mistake, now they seem easily irritated, as if your presence itself is a source of frustration. The person who used to look at you with admiration and affection now seems to find faults in the smallest things, making you feel as though you are constantly walking on eggshells. Their reactions become disproportionate. A forgotten text message, a minor inconvenience, or even an innocent joke can suddenly turn into a source of tension. Where they used to be understanding, they now seem easily exasperated. You begin to notice that even your attempts to be affectionate or playful are met with disinterest or impatience. The little inside jokes that once brought you closer now seem to annoy them. The conversations that once flowed naturally now feel strained, as if any little thing you say could trigger an unnecessary argument. It is not that you have changed, but rather their perception of you has shifted. When someone no longer feels the same way, their mind starts to focus more on what bothers them rather than what they love about you. They begin to highlight flaws rather than appreciating qualities. They may not even realize they are doing it, but their subconscious frustration manifests through irritation over things that once never mattered. This kind of behavior is especially painful because it makes you question yourself. You wonder if you are doing something wrong, if you are being too sensitive, or if you have somehow become more annoying than you were before. This shift in attitude can also be seen in how they react to your needs and emotions. If you express concern about their behavior or ask if something is wrong, they may snap at you, become defensive, or make you feel like you are being too demanding. Instead of reassuring you or communicating honestly, they deflect, making it seem as though you are the problem. Their tone becomes short, their responses less patient, and their willingness to listen starts to disappear. Where they once comforted you when you were upset, now they seem bothered by your emotions, as if your feelings are an inconvenience rather than something they care about. Over time, this constant irritation creates distance. You start to hesitate before speaking, fearing that anything you say or do might set them off. You second guess yourself, wondering if you should change the way you act just to avoid another sigh, another dismissive remark, another cold reaction. The warmth that once existed between you fades, replaced by an underlying tension that makes even casual interactions feel heavy. You notice that they are quicker to criticize, but slower to compliment. They point out what annoys them, but they rarely acknowledge what they appreciate. Even in moments that should be enjoyable, their frustration lingers. Maybe you are out at dinner, and instead of engaging in conversation, they seem distracted or uninterested. Maybe you try to share something exciting and they barely react, as if your joy is an afterthought. The moments that once felt light-hearted and full of connection now carry an unspoken weight, a feeling that something is off, even if they never directly say it. This growing irritation is often a sign that they are emotionally detaching. When someone still deeply cares, they have patience, they have understanding, and they naturally overlook the little things. But when love begins to fade, the things they once adored or accepted now stand out as flaws. Their reactions become more about how they feel internally rather than anything you are actually doing. The frustration they show is less about you and more about their shifting emotions. Yet it is you who feels the impact the most. Reduced affection is one of the clearest indicators that someone's feelings have changed. Affection is not just about grand gestures. It's found in the little things. How they hold your hand, the way they look at you, the warmth in their touch, and the effort they put into making you feel loved. When someone begins to emotionally detach, these things start to fade. What was once natural and effortless now feels distant or forced. In the beginning, the change may be so gradual that it is easy to overlook. Maybe they stop kissing you goodbye in the mornings, or their hugs feel a little less tight. Maybe they used to rest their hand on your knee while sitting next to you, but now they keep to themselves. The absence of these small gestures might not seem significant at first, but over time they accumulate, creating an undeniable gap between you. The way they once held you like you were the most important person in the world now feels different, more like a habit than a genuine expression of love. It's not just about physical touch. Verbal affection also begins to decline. The way they used to say "I love you" with feeling now seems routine, or worse, absent altogether. Compliments become rare, and the playful teasing or sweet words that once made you smile start to disappear. You may find yourself reminiscing about a time when they couldn't go a day without expressing their feelings, but now you're left wondering if they still feel the same way at all. The lack of affectionate words creates an emotional distance, making interactions feel more like obligations rather than moments of connection. There is a noticeable shift in their responsiveness to your affection. Where they once leaned into your hugs, they now stand still. Where they once kissed you passionately, they now give you a quick peck or avoid it entirely. You might reach for their hand, only to find them subtly pulling away or keeping their hands occupied. The warmth that once existed in their touch is replaced with an unfamiliar coldness. It's not that they are outright rejecting you, but rather that they no longer initiate or reciprocate affection the way they used to. Affection is deeply tied to emotional connection, and when that connection weakens, so does the desire to express love in physical and verbal ways. The absence of these gestures leaves an unspoken void, one that is felt more deeply than any words could express. It creates a sense of longing, a desire to recapture the closeness that once felt effortless. You find yourself questioning if you are imagining things, if you are reading too much into their actions. But deep down, you know something has shifted. It's not just in private moments that this change is evident. Even in social settings, their body language toward you becomes different. Maybe they used to proudly introduce you to people, placing a hand on your back or holding your hand in a crowd. Now they seem more detached, less inclined to show public displays of affection. The way they once looked at you, full of admiration and warmth, now seems indifferent or distant. The small gestures that once reassured you of their love are now missing, leaving you feeling unnoticed or unimportant. Another sign of reduced affection is a lack of effort in maintaining emotional intimacy. They used to send thoughtful messages, check in throughout the day, or plan little surprises to make you smile. Now those things are rare or non-existent. The energy they once put into making you feel special has faded, replaced by a passive approach to the relationship. They no longer go out of their way to make you feel loved, and when you bring it up, they may dismiss it as unimportant or make excuses about being busy or stressed. The absence of affection can also be felt in the way they respond to your emotions. Where they once comforted you when you were upset, now they seem indifferent or impatient. Where they once celebrated your achievements with excitement, now they offer only a brief acknowledgement. The emotional distance is felt in their lack of enthusiasm for both the highs and lows of your life. It becomes clear that the connection you once shared is no longer a priority for them. Over time, the lack of affection creates an emotional imbalance. You may find yourself giving more, initiating hugs, reaching for their hand, expressing your feelings, only to be met with minimal effort in return. This one-sided dynamic makes you question if you are holding on to something that no longer exists the way it once did. The absence of warmth, touch, and loving words begins to feel like a silent message, one that speaks louder than anything they could ever say. The success that they didn't accept, the success they didn't say,